5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Science holds the key to our survival as a planet.
But science is cumulative.
Modern science
is the knowledge.
Hello and welcome to our podcast. My name is Ali and I'll be your host for today's show. I'd like to start today's episode with a statistic that I happened to read this morning. 40% of workers who were participants in a test drive following a night shift at work were involved in a near crash event. And I'm just going to let that statistic sink in for a moment. This means that 4 out of 10 people were almost in an accident. So I decided to read more about the subject. And I discovered that 15% of the workforce work overnight. And this is in the States, of course. And that doesn't really surprise me because we all know somebody who works at night, be it a close family member or a friend. And this, of course, leads to higher risk for drowsy driving and in turn crashes. But to get back to our original statistic, the study was conducted on 16 night shift workers. They drove for 2 hours on a closed driving track. They slept for 7.6 hours the previous night with no night shift. During the second part of the experiment, they had the 16 workers work a night shift before taking the drive. And they found that during the post-night shift drive, and I'll read these out to you, over 1/3 of the drivers required emergency braking maneuvers. Almost half of the drivers were terminated early because the drivers failed to maintain control of the vehicle. Participants had longer blink duration and increased number of slow eye movement. The risk of micro-sleep episodes, sleep for less than 3 seconds, increased after driving for more than 30 minutes. And I want to get back to that last fact because it's really important. These people were sleeping for less than 3 seconds. And I know that time period seems really small. But that doesn't change the fact that these people were totally unaware of the road for less than 3 seconds. So if a deer jumped in front of your car, you would have absolutely no reflex reaction whatsoever. A new piece of research has shown that eating in front of a mirror reduces the tastiness of unhealthy food. And I want you to try that the next time you're about to dig into a cheeseburger. I want you to take a mirror, put it right in front of you, and take your first bite while looking yourself dead in the eyes. And I bet you the first thought that's going to cross your mind is, holy shit, I look like a chipmunk with overstuffed cheeks. And so this piece of research was conducted on 185 undergraduate students. They were offered the choice between a fruit salad and a chocolate cake. They were then asked to consume their choice, first in front of a mirror, and then in the presence of one. And, unsurprisingly, the people that were eating chocolate cake in front of a mirror felt uncomfortable and noticed a decrease in the tastefulness of the food. Because, let's face it, having a mirror allows you to objectively judge yourself. It puts you in a position to be able to say that this food is bad for me, or this food is good for my health. Moving on to a more serious topic, more than half of patients who have had a sudden cardiac arrest ignore symptoms that can occur up to a month prior to the fatal heart attack. And this is frustrating because medical intervention can potentially save their lives, and we'll talk about this more in a bit. And so a recent study showed that most common symptoms include chest pains and pressure, shortness of breath, palpitations, and influenza-like indicators such as nausea, abdominal pain, and back pain. And we also know that around 250,000 people die each year in the US alone from sudden cardiac arrest. And before we move on to the results from the study, I'm going to talk about the two terms heart attack and sudden cardiac arrest. You probably use these two terms interchangeably, but they have different meanings. A heart attack, or a myocardial infarction, is usually caused by clogged coronary arteries that reduce the flow of blood arriving to the heart muscles, while cardiac arrest is caused by defective electrical activity in the heart. In a recent study on the causes of sudden cardiac arrest, it was shown that 51% of patients experience warning symptoms, predominantly chest pains, prior to the cardiac arrest. And in the group that experienced symptoms, 93% experienced them again in the 24 hours preceding the cardiac arrest. So these patients were getting recurring symptoms. But yet, only 19% of those who experienced symptoms called emergency medical services. It was also shown that patients who experienced symptoms and sought medical assistance had a survival rate of 32% compared to people that didn't seek medical assistance and that had a survival rate of 6%. And this is all to show you guys that these kinds of symptoms should never be taken lightly, and you should always take the necessary precautions and seek medical assistance if these symptoms are a recurring event. And finally, to talk about concerned mothers who wish to discuss their daughter's weight with them, a study conducted on a group of 6 to 8 graders and their mothers revealed that their daughters were actually worse off after discussing their weight issues with their mother. This also led to an increase in eating disorders, among other things. And this is mainly due to the fact that girls in that certain age bracket are more self-conscious about their bodies and their outer appearances. And so when their mother approaches them, with good intentions of course, to talk about their weight, it makes their daughter's self-esteem crumble. And the study showed that the best results were achieved when there was no intervention whatsoever from the parents. And so that will be all for today's podcast episode. But we have good news. Our podcast will be split into 2 episodes per week, one on Monday and one on Thursday, to have 2 short podcasts instead of one long one. So thanks for listening and stay tuned for updates.